These are the nuclear enrichment facilities in Iran. They're deeply guarded, they're deeply underground, and they're very hard to get to. And that's for a reason, obviously. But the conversation is really about what kind of response Israel can do, needs to do here, because the blizzard that we saw from Iran was slightly different from the one in April. These were just ballistic missiles, so they got there a lot faster. So there was an element of surprise there. There was some risk that they were going to hit cities as a result. Some of them did appear to even get through. And so for Israel now, it's like they can't just do what they did back in April, which was send some drones to an Iranian military site and call themselves done. It does seem that there is a conversation around maybe targeting Iran's oil infrastructure. That obviously would be significant not only for Iran, but also for the oil market, for the global supply. We've seen oil generally shrug off the tensions in the Middle East this year, and that's because they're not that worried about supply. But if you get supply affected from Iran, then you've got a major change for the market. So do they hit a military site? Do they hit oil installations? It seems to be one of those two, but it seems like the nuclear sites are off the table.
Okay, so or the focus now on oil and potentially other options involved there as well. At the same time, Ros, we've had Israel striking more targets in Lebanon. What do we know about the situation on the ground there?
Well, as you were saying, they've hit about another dozen sites in Beirut overnight. Authorities say that a number of people were killed, particularly in a medical facility that seems to be affiliated with Hezbollah. So you do have a continuation of heavy strikes on Beirut itself, but you also have Israeli troops still operating over the border into Lebanon. And that's what Israel has said is going to be targeted and limited action. It's very unclear how many Israeli troops are there, but we do know they are engaging, it seems, with Hezbollah over the border. There's been reports of a number of skirmishes in different villages, certainly of some firefights that are going on. So it doesn't seem that it's going to stay necessarily limited and targeted. Of course, for Israel, the question is, do they get pulled in over the border in a protracted fashion? So we are seeing really multiple fronts now inside Lebanon for Israel, both in terms of airstrikes that are continuing on Beirut and their troops operating on the ground just over the border.
Well, where you've got the G7 statement calling for restraint, is anyone going to listen?
The G7, that is the question. The G7's been calling for restraint in a lot of things for a long period of time, not just in the Middle East, but also obviously when it comes to Russia's war with Ukraine. And the question is, do Iran and Israel really listen to anybody at this point? I mean, if the Israeli administration is not necessarily taking strong cues from the US, its single biggest ally militarily and so on, then is it going to listen to calls from restraint from the G7?
Ros, as we're waiting to see what Israel does next, I'm curious about the position that Benjamin Netanyahu is in. He had been criticised at home over his handling of the war in Gaza. Does this escalation on several fronts strengthen his political position in Israel?
Well, there have been ebbs and flows in his position at home, and certainly he's quite hemmed in by the right. And he, in fact, that's sort of his own making, in a way, because of the deals he's done with the right in Israel. His personal popularity does seem to ebb and flow, but in these moments, of course, of great challenge for Israel, you do see people tending to rally behind the government on this, and certainly the feeling, that for people who've been living in the north of Israel, that they do want to return to their homes. They've been unable to return to their homes because of shelling by Hezbollah for almost a year now. There's a strong desire to do that across the country. And so you can see that is a unifying point in a way for the government. They're doing this because they want to create a safe space, they say, for all Israelis inside Israel. And so that might be a moment, again, of support for Benjamin Netanyahu. In the broader run, of course, there are big questions about his leadership.